Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive with us. This time, we're going to be looking at AI or die, the new era of education. And wow, even the title's a little intense, right?
Yeah, a little bit provocative for sure.
It is. So this book really dives into how augmented intelligence could transform education. And just to clarify for anyone listening, augmented intelligence is AI, but it's focused on helping us humans.
Right, amplifying our abilities rather than replacing us.
Exactly. And honestly, reading this book, it was kind of a roller coaster. Like there were parts that were super inspiring and then parts that kind of freaked me out a little.
Yeah, I can see that. It definitely makes you think about the future in a whole new way.
It does. So one of the big things the book tackles is this global education crisis that's happening right now. Did you know that millions of kids around the world are out of school?
It's a staggering number. The book mentions over 244 million children and youth not in school. And then on top of that, more than half of the children in developing countries, they can't even understand a simple text by the time they're 10 years old.
It's heartbreaking when you think about it. Like if I hadn't gotten a good education, I don't even know if I would be here doing this right now.
Right. It really makes you appreciate the opportunities that education provides.
It does. And the book makes this point that it's not just about getting kids into school. It's about making sure they're getting an education that's actually good quality.
Yeah.
And that's relevant to like the world we're living in now. Things are changing so fast.
Absolutely. Education needs to keep up with the times.
Exactly. And that's where this whole augmented intelligence thing comes in. The book is basically saying that AI could be a game changer for education. But is that realistic? Like, how do you even start to apply AI to something as complex as learning?
Well, it's important to remember that we're not talking about replacing teachers with robots.
Right. That was my initial thought, too.
Yeah, it's a common misconception. But augmented intelligence is about giving teachers new tools and support.
So what kinds of tools are we talking about?
Well, imagine AI handling all of the administrative tasks that teachers have to deal with right now. Things like grading papers, organizing schedules, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that would free up so much of their time.
Exactly. And that time could then be used to actually teach, to mentor students, to connect with them on a deeper level.
It's like AI taking care of the busy work so teachers can focus on what they do best.
Right. And the book even talks about how AI can help personalize lessons for each student.
Oh, yeah, I remember that part. It was talking about how every student learns differently. Some need things explained visually, some are more hands-on, and AI could track that and adjust the lessons to fit each student's needs.
It's like having a personal tutor for every kid.
Exactly. I remember there was this example in the book about a student who was struggling with math. And just imagine getting lessons that were tailored to your exact pace and like the areas where you need the most help.
Right. It could be a game changer for students who are falling behind in traditional classrooms.
It could. But, anytime you bring in a powerful tool like AI, you have to be careful, right? Like I've heard stories about AI algorithms being biased or making unfair decisions.
Absolutely. That's a big concern. And the book definitely addresses the ethical implications of using AI in education.
So they're not just blindly saying AI is the solution to everything.
No, they're very aware of the potential downsides.
Yeah.
It's like any powerful tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
So how do we make sure that AI in education is used for good?
The book talks about the importance of transparency, making sure everyone understands how the algorithms work, and also involving educators, parents, and even students in the process.
So it's not just a bunch of tech people making decisions behind closed doors.
Right. It needs to be a collaborative effort.
I like that. Okay, so we've talked about the problems that AI could solve in education, but what about the exciting stuff, the possibilities? Does the book get into that?
Oh, definitely. And that's where things start to get really mind-blowing.
Okay, I'm ready. Give me a glimpse into the future.
Well, the book has all these case studies of schools around the world that are already using AI in really innovative ways. One example that stuck with me was Bridge International Academies in Kenya. They're using AI-powered tablets to deliver quality education in communities that don't have a lot of resources.
Wow, so even kids in like remote villages can get access to good education.
Exactly. And the results are pretty incredible. Students in those schools are learning way more than their peers in traditional schools, even though they have fewer resources.
That's so encouraging to hear.
It is. It shows that AI can really help level the playing field.
Okay, what else? Give me another example.
All right, how about this? There's this program in Colombia where they're using augmented reality to teach STEM subjects.
Augmented reality, like those apps where you can see digital stuff overlaid on the real world.
Exactly. And guess what? They've seen a huge increase in the number of girls interested in science and technology careers.
That's amazing. It's like AI is helping break down those old stereotypes about who can be a scientist or an engineer.
Right, it's opening up new possibilities.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other examples that really blew your mind?
There's one from Iraq that really stood out to me. The Idalim project is using AR and AI to create virtual classrooms for kids who've been displaced by conflict.
Wow. So even in the midst of all that chaos, kids can still learn and connect with each other.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable.
It really makes you realize the potential that AI has to make a positive impact.
It does, and those are just a few examples of what's happening right now. The book paints this picture of a future where classrooms aren't limited by physical space anymore. Kids in rural villages can collaborate with students on the other side of the planet, using AR and VR to explore virtual ecosystems, learning from the best teachers no matter where they are.
It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It does, doesn't it? But the book argues that this future isn't that far off, and honestly, after reading about what's already happening, I'm starting to believe it.
Me too. But of course, there are still some big challenges to overcome, like what's standing in the way of this amazing future.
Well, one major issue is the digital divide. We can talk about all this fancy technology, but what about the millions of kids who don't even have access to the internet?
Right. It's like we're talking about two completely different worlds sometimes.
Exactly. And the book doesn't shy away from that. It acknowledges that we need to address the digital divide head on if we want AI to truly benefit everyone.
So how do we do that? How do we bridge that gap?
Well, that's a big question, and it's something we'll dive deeper into in the next part of our deep dive.
Ooh, a cliffhanger. Okay, but before we move on, there's one thing I have to ask about. The book keeps mentioning these fusion skills. What are those all about?
Yes, fusion skills. That's where things get really interesting. It was actually one of the biggest aha moments for me when I was reading the book.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break it down for me.
So basically, fusion skills are this blend of hard and soft skills that the book argues are going to be absolutely essential for anyone who wants to thrive in the future, especially in a world where AI is becoming more and more common.
Okay, so it's not just about knowing how to code or use a specific software.
Right. It's about those human skills that robots can't replicate.
Like what?
Things like adaptability, collaboration, interdisciplinary thinking, emotional intelligence.
Those are all really important skills, especially in today's world.
Exactly. And the book argues that AI can actually help us develop these skills.
Well, that's interesting. So AI can actually help us become more human.
In a way, yes. But we'll have to save that conversation for our next deep dive.
All right, you've got me hooked. Can't wait to explore that further. But for now, we'll have to leave our listeners hanging. Make sure to join us next time as we dig deeper into building these future classrooms, tackling the digital divide, and exploring how AI can help us develop those all-important fusion skills.
Welcome back to our deep dive into AI or die. When we left off, we were talking about this incredible vision of the future of education, with AI-powered classrooms and students developing those essential fusion skills.
It all sounds amazing.
Yeah.
But I keep coming back to this question of how we actually make this happen. It feels like there are some massive hurdles to overcome, like the digital divide and making sure AI is used ethically. The book calls it a global vision, which sounds incredibly ambitious.
It definitely is ambitious, but the book argues that it's not only possible, but absolutely necessary. It lays out this roadmap that involves governments, educators, tech experts, and communities all working together.
So it's not just about having the coolest gadgets or the smartest algorithms. It's about getting everyone on the same page about how we want to use this technology to shape the future.
Exactly. And the book highlights some really inspiring examples of this kind of global collaboration already happening. One that stood out to me was UNESCO's Global Education Coalition. They're bringing together organizations from all over the world to share resources and best practices for using technology in education.
That's really encouraging. It gives me hope that we can actually pull this off. But let's zoom back in for a second. Imagine we figured out the global collaboration thing, and we're all on board with using AI ethically. What does an actual future classroom look like? Are we talking about kids plugged into virtual reality all day?
The book actually paints a picture that's much more balanced than that. It talks about blended learning, combining the best of the physical and digital worlds.
So you might have students doing hands-on experiments in a science lab one minute, and then putting on VR headsets to explore a virtual rainforest the next.
Exactly.
Okay, that sounds pretty cool. It's like taking field trips without ever leaving the classroom. But what about the teachers? What are they doing in this futuristic classroom?
That's one of the most exciting parts of the book's vision. It doesn't see AI as replacing teachers. It sees AI as empowering them. Imagine AI handling all the tedious tasks like grading papers and taking attendance. That frees up teachers to work one-on-one with students, guide their learning, and really nurture their creativity.
So teachers become more like mentors and coaches, helping students figure out their own learning journey.
Right. And the book emphasizes that this shift in the teacher's role is essential. AI can be a powerful tool, but it can't replace the human connection that's so vital to learning.
I like that. It's not about technology taking over. It's about technology supporting and enhancing what humans do best.
Exactly.
But even if we figure out the technology and the teacher training, there's still the whole issue of digital literacy. Not everyone is comfortable using technology, especially older generations. How do we address that?
You're right, digital literacy is crucial. The book talks about the need for more teacher training programs that focus specifically on using AI tools in the classroom. And it also stresses the importance of involving parents and communities in this process. It can't just be about teachers and tech experts figuring this stuff out on their own.
So it's about bringing everyone along on this journey, making sure that no one is left behind. Okay, we've talked about the global vision, the blended learning environments, the changing role of teachers, the importance of digital literacy. What about assessment? I imagine tests and quizzes will have to change as well.
Absolutely. The book argues that AI can transform assessment in really exciting ways. Instead of relying on those traditional standardized tests, which often just measure rote memorization, we can use AI to create more personalized and authentic assessments that measure skills and competencies that are actually relevant to the 21st century.
So instead of just bubbling in answers on a multiple choice test, students might be challenged to design a website or solve a real-world problem.
Exactly.
It's about moving beyond just memorizing facts and figures and focusing on developing the skills that students need to be successful.
And AI can help make those assessments more engaging, more relevant, and more meaningful for students.
And it ties back to the whole idea of fusion skills, right? If we're preparing students for a world where AI is going to be everywhere, we need to be assessing them on those skills that AI can't replicate, like creativity, critical thinking, and collaboration.
Exactly. And the book suggests that AI can actually be used to assess those skills in ways that are more accurate and objective than traditional methods.
Wow. So AI can help us understand how students learn and what they're capable of, so we can provide them with the best possible support and guidance.
Right. And that brings us to one of the most important points the book makes. This isn't just about revolutionizing K-12 education. It's about transforming how we learn and grow as individuals throughout our entire lives.
Lifelong learning.
Exactly. The book envisions a future where lifelong learning is the norm, and AI helps us access personalized learning experiences at any age, regardless of our background or location.
It's like education becomes this ongoing adventure, a journey of discovery that never really ends.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Okay, but let's be realistic for a second. All this talk about future classrooms and personalized learning sounds great. But is it really scalable? Can we actually make this happen for every student in the world?
That's the million-dollar question. And it's something we'll explore further in the final part of our deep dive. But one thing the book makes clear is that this isn't something that's going to happen overnight. It requires a long-term commitment, a willingness to experiment and learn from our mistakes, and a shared belief that every student deserves the opportunity to reach their full potential.
It's about creating a future where education is truly equitable and accessible to everyone.
Exactly.
I'm really excited to dive into that in the next part of our deep dive. But I'm also feeling a little overwhelmed, to be honest. There's so much to consider, so many different perspectives to explore.
I know what you mean. It's a lot to take in, but that's the beauty of this deep dive. We're just scratching the surface here. There's always more to learn.
Speaking of learning more, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on how AI can be used to address social issues like poverty and climate change. The book touches on that a bit, right?
It does. That's exactly where we'll pick up in the final part of our deep dive.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into AI or die. We've talked about personalized learning, future classrooms, fusion skills, but there's one more thing we need to discuss, and it's a big one.
You're right. We've explored how AI can transform education for individuals. But what about its potential to create positive change on a larger scale?
That's what I'm really interested in. Like, can AI actually help solve some of the world's biggest problems?
That's the question the book tackles. And it argues that AI can be a powerful force for addressing things like poverty, inequality, even climate change.
Okay, now that's getting my attention. But how?
Yeah.
How does AI help with something as massive as poverty?
Well, it all comes back to the power of education.
Right.
We know that education is one of the most effective ways to break the cycle of poverty, but for so many kids around the world, quality education is simply out of reach.
Because of things like location or cost.
Exactly. They might live in remote areas with limited access to schools, or their families might not be able to afford the costs of education.
And that's where AI can make a difference.
Right. Think back to those AI-powered tablets we talked about, the ones being used in Kenya and other places. Yeah. Those tablets can deliver high-quality educational content to students no matter where they live. It gives them a chance to learn even if they don't have a traditional school or teacher nearby.
And because the technology is relatively low cost, it makes education more affordable.
Exactly.
And like AI is breaking down all those barriers that have prevented so many people from getting an education.
And the impact goes beyond just basic literacy and numeracy. The book talks about how AI can connect people with vocational training programs, helping them develop skills for better jobs and a way to support themselves and their families.
It's really giving people the tools they need to succeed.
Right.
But what about inequality in general? Can AI really level the playing field when it comes to education?
It's a complex issue, but the book argues that AI can play a significant role. It highlights programs using AI to address inequalities related to gender location and socioeconomic status.
So they're using AI to make sure everyone has an equal opportunity to learn.
Exactly. One example that comes to mind is this learning app from India called BYJUs. It uses AI to provide personalized learning to millions of students, many of whom live in rural areas, and it's making a real difference. Studies show that students using BYJUs are seeing improvements in their learning, especially in math and science.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's not just about location. AIs can also help address gender inequality in education.
Oh, right, like encouraging more girls to go into STEM fields.
Exactly. There's this great program in Nigeria called TechHer. They're using AI to teach young women coding and entrepreneurship, giving them the skills they need to pursue careers in tech.
I love that. It's giving them opportunities that they might not have had otherwise.
Right.
Okay, so we've talked about poverty and inequality. What about climate change? Can AI really make a difference there?
The book argues that it can. AI can help us understand climate change and equip future generations with the knowledge to create a more sustainable future. Well, one way is through immersive learning experiences. Imagine using AR to let students experience the impact of climate change firsthand.
Like seeing the effects of rising sea levels or exploring a virtual rainforest.
Exactly. It makes climate change real for them, not just some abstract concept in a textbook.
It's like those virtual field trips we were talking about earlier.
Right. And AI can also be used to analyze local environmental data. This helps students understand the challenges in their own communities and come up with solutions.
So they're not just learning about climate change in a general sense. They're learning how it affects them directly and what they can do to make a difference.
Exactly.
It's empowering them to be part of the solution.
Right.
But with all this talk about AI, I have to ask, how do we make sure it's used ethically and responsibly?
That's a crucial question. And the book stresses the importance of transparency, making sure the algorithms are fair and unbiased, and involving diverse voices in the development and implementation of AI.
It's about using AI for good.
Yeah.
And making sure it benefits everyone. Wow, this has been a really eye-opening conversation. I have to admit I was a little skeptical about AI at first. But after reading this book and discussing it with you, I'm feeling much more optimistic.
Me too. It's clear that there are challenges ahead. But we also have an incredible opportunity to use AI to create a better future for education and for the world.
Well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into AI or Die, the new era of education. We hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as we have, and if you're interested in learning more, we encourage you to check out the book for yourself. Thanks for listening.